This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
This episode of Momming While Muslim is brought to you by Guidance Residential. Join Guidance Residential on March 23rd for a free career webinar and find out about job opportunities with the company that might help you, your family, and your community. This episode is also sponsored by Muslim Kids TV, where you can find over 15,000 resources, including Islamic videos, games, and ebooks for your children. Use code MKTV2021 to get a 25% discount off of your annual subscription. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Momming While Muslim podcast. This is Uzma Jaffrey.
And this is Zeba Hassan, and we are live in Clubhouse today as well, so that's really exciting.
Welcome to everybody in the room. Thank you for your patience while we, get our tech set up and our audio and everything set up. It's fun doing this. I feel like kind of mavericks.
We're mavericks, but I hear voices in different parts of my brain, so it's a little bit scary and stressful at the same time.
Yeah. The love for technology so that we can stay more connected and reach more audiences, inshallah. So that's awesome. Thanks everybody for being everywhere you are while we're live.
I definitely appreciate it because I know it's become kind of like a slight obsession of yours, Clubhouse. So the fact that we are able to incorporate it into our podcast, I am super excited to be able to fulfill that for you, Uzma. And thank you for being so, what's the word when you...
Is it resourceful? That's what I get called a lot. I feel like Zeba just got frozen, but we'll get her back online in just a moment. Sometimes that just happens, sadly, with network connection.
So tech is not working, but it's coming back on right now. So Uzma, do you want to tell me what's been going on in your week? Because I feel like a lot's been up with you.
Okay, can I tell you something really exciting that happened with my tween?
Oh, I'm nervous about this. Did you walk in on something?
I was, I usually check on the little kids to make sure that they're down for the night. And I saw the light on in my oldest's room. And so he'll be 13, inshallah, in May, right? So I walk in there and I'm like, hey, what you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just reading, And he was. And yes, my heart was so happy that he was rereading Harry Potter for the third time. So I'm very pleased with that. But I was like, okay, well, try to get some rest and I love you. And I turned around to walk away and he goes, well, I love you too.
Woo! That is a mommy
And I was
thing.
I caught my breath because I was like, wow, I haven't heard him say that in so long, subhanAllah. And I was I had your voice in my head, cherish those moments. Alhamdulillah. That I feel like was the highlight of my week.
Oh, I love hearing that because you really do have to capture those, especially when you're going into that teenage stage. Put it in a pocket, like an emotional pocket somewhere, because when they're slamming the door in your face, you can kind of pull it out, put it in your brain, and think,
I love him.
I love him. I love him. I love him. I love him. So we just have to take those small moments and put them together, wear it as a, metaphorical necklace and just pop the beads when we need to pop the beads and go from there. So I am so thankful that you had that experience.
I really like your metaphor. Thank you. How was your week?
We are dealing, speaking of teenagers, we are dealing a little, our school issue. And for people that have followed along, I'm homeschooling half of my children and the other two decided to stay virtual with their current public school system. And, we're dealing with the onset of AP tests coming up, SAT tests coming up, the stress of starting to apply for colleges coming up. All of this is kind of coming to fruition all at one point. So, it's one of those things that start bubbling up and it starts to kind of get overflowed a little bit, and so we kind of had to go and sit down and help my oldest schedule blocks, like that whole time blocking that we talked about with, I think it was Yas Guru. Yeah, I do it on my own for my own stuff, but now I had to impart that knowledge a little bit to my son and have him take a little bit of ownership in his own scheduling. So I think a lot of people think that I'm overscheduled or I'm obsessed with time and this and that. But the reality of the situation is it allowing myself to see those visual blocks lets me actually relax, because then I can be like, okay, I can't get to this today. I can put that block on a different day and I still can get those things done. And for somebody that is high anxiety like myself, it really does help minimize and lower my stress level. So I feel that my oldest is a little bit more like me than his calm dad. So I am trying to impart some of those coping skills and coping mechanisms that I've had to deal with my anxiety, which I have been open about, and imparting some of that wisdom to him with the hopes that in seeing those blocks of time and he can control those blocks of time, that perhaps it might help alleviate that stress. That is my prayer for him. That is what I'm trying to do. And quite frankly, it is painful. But every single thing to do with this particular age, is painful. So I'm not going to pretend like it's otherwise. But I know you've been having a good week with your son, and my son dealing with the APs. But I do know, which I always get excited and look forward to, is your soapbox moment of the week, my dearest. So can you take us to school and let us know what we need to be, aware of for this week?
Yeah, it's not super exciting. It's actually really disappointing. So on March 6th at Chiefland Middle School in Levy County, Florida, there was a violent attack in the classroom. And obviously, CARE Florida is calling it a hate crime because it had to do with the student who was attacked, happened to be Muslim, and another student attacked this person. What is the most disturbing about it is that the rest of the class was cheering and jeering them on. We remember middle school fights and, making the circle and being horrified at what was going on until school security officers intervened. At this point, the video for this particular attack has gone viral, and we're not going to play it because I find it very disturbing to see those things and to see that now, instead of being horrified, students are actually egging on the attack rather than saving the person. The saving grace, however, was that one student did step forward and worked aggressively to stop the attack. And so CARE Florida has come out to obviously condone it and wants it labeled as a hate crime. And I believe that school district does have anti-bullying and anti-discrimination training, but I want to see the research that says that that works. It's obviously not, and we need to do better for our students who I know are already like emotionally in a hard place in those middle school years, in a pandemic, maybe with some financial stressors, definitely with all these mental stressors going on. And we need to do more. Just having training is not going to be enough for students because videos don't do it. We need to teach them how to have effective dialogue and how to have more adult dialogue. I know that they're middle schoolers, but that doesn't mean that they can't learn to have rational conversations and learn the art of negotiation early. If you have the stomach for it, check out the video, contact CARE Florida to see what you can offer this family and this particular Muslim student at this time. I do not believe that the student who made the assault should be charged with anything because again that is a child and that is still somebody's child, and we just need to train them better. I will always plug the Islamic Network group and say get their resources, get them into the classroom, teach the teachers first because they do have educator training resources. Let's get that in there and then do right by our students, and that's our soapbox for today.
No, I definitely appreciate that, and I think in our show notes, we'll go ahead and share with people how they can help participate in that particular campaign. And believe it or not, I was one of those people that used to get into fights in the playgrounds, and
You,
I probably
wow.
have. I know, isn't that bad? I was just such an angry kid and always in fights. But in fairness, my fights were always because I was defending somebody else. So it was always something, but I've now learned through my introspection and my my spiritual, you know, journey that you don't have to fight with your fists, you can fight with your heart, you can fight with, your ideas, and perhaps these children will be a prime case and prime circumstance where they can actually undergo some of these studies where they learn about other cultures. And who knows? Maybe they'll grow up and be a change for the good. And that's what we have to hope and pray for. So thank you for bringing that to our attention today. But we're going to continue this month's Firewalker series. And as you know, all these conversations have been extremely tough for us to have. I've had to dig out my waterproof mascara, as I said last week, because I'm always afraid I'm going to cry. I cry when it's partly cloudy outside. So when you actually give me a reason to cry, I'm going to cry some more. But we are finding so much hope despite all of the sadness, through God and through the strength and resilience of all the mamas we've brought on. May Allah always bless, may we learn from them and bless them in all that they're doing. And may the angels say Ameen to our dua for them, and for their families. The next Firewalker mama to join us today is Samia Masood, whose harrowing experience will have you holding your breath because it's been a journey. Samira has a master's degree in teaching, K through 6, develop, think, and teach, and she's one of our partners where that's concerned. So thank you so much for all of your virtual resources to help my kids learn at home during this pandemic as new homeschoolers. So she has been extremely busy this year. So we really appreciate her that she's coming on and telling us about her journey. Although all of this could make her a firewalker in and of itself, on today's episode is way more than that, to be honest with you. She's here to tell us a little bit about her personal journey with her child, and why brain tumors just suck. Thank you so much, Samia, for joining us today. And please introduce yourself to everybody.
Assalamualaikum,
Yeah.
Samia. Welcome.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
Samia, can you unmute on the Clubhouse so that people can hear you on Clubhouse as well?
Absolutely. All right.
There we go.
So yes, assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Samia, and Seba and Uzma, we met last year around this time, a couple of months before this time, but it was around the same experience. So I'm really grateful to be back. I'm really grateful that you guys have just had so much positive influence in getting the word out about something that I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're here for, right? To learn what we don't know. And it starts with the experiences of our mom sisters. So we usually kick off the show asking a little bit about your mom's story and your momming philosophy. Can you share that with our audiences?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a mom of 2 boys, and just like Uzma, you mentioned, I have a preteen. He's actually turning 13 this Sunday. So that's
welcome. I'm scared for you, lady.
I am too, just a little bit. But mashallah, he's a really good kid, and so what you mentioned earlier, Uzma, about hearing the words "I love you," like when I heard that, my heart leapt for you as well, because it's one of those moments, Exactly. And now you're hearing it from a voice that's a few decibels lower. So it's
Yes.
So that's my older one. He's going to, inshallah, be turning 13 this Sunday. And then I also have a younger son, Tariq, and he is currently 9 years old. And this diagnosis and what we're going to talk about all happened when he was 5. My mommying philosophy, it kind of leans into the fact that I'm an educator, but my mommying philosophy leans around the idea of give kids the choice. And give kids a choice isn't necessarily just in all aspects of their life where, you get to do whatever you want. It's more where as a parent or as an educator, you sort of pave the path of making it seem like they have plenty of choice and freedom, but really they're picking from the couple of choices that you're hoping they'll the direction that they'll go in. So for just like a quick example, it'll be along the lines of, what vegetable would you like to eat for dinner? So they have a sense of choice, they have a sense of freedom, but at the same time, you're picking a vegetable. So it's kind of a win-win on a parent's book. The other part that I've learned through this journey that's a little bit more newer, the education part was part of who I was even before I had children. The other part is trusting them, believing them, trusting them, and letting them know that that I'm always here. And that part, as a mom, you learn that from the day that they're born, but really going through this experience and having to step up in the way that I had to sometimes, that is now fully ingrained in who I am.
I love that. Those are good lessons. So for anybody taking notes, write all of that down. I wish somebody had taught me that back in the day.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So I think we should not withhold anymore because people are probably in suspense about what ended up happening to your son. So can you tell us what that was, what that looked like, and how it felt in that very beginning stage?
Okay. Yeah. So when, like I said, mashallah, he's 9 years old and he's doing well at this point. But at the age of 5, back in 2017, my son Tariq was happy, running around, all sorts of normal milestones had been met. And yet, just randomly, had started to feel nauseous. And at one point, we just thought it was the stomach bug. We took him to the GI doctor after a few days, and it was just acid reflux medicine or something or another. And nothing really kept answering what we had going on. And it wasn't happening so much that you would think, oh man, something is really going on here. It was happening in between play dates. It was happening in between soccer practice. He would go an entire day or an entire week where he was fine, and then he would have 3 full days where he was feeling nauseous on and off. And so this really wasn't answering anything for us. But I, as someone who just particularly, we didn't have cancer in our family, it wasn't on my radar, I went through the idea of it should be fine, inshallah, he'll just outgrow this. It's a phase, something along those lines. So in the year of 2017, from January till about May, that's what we sort of experienced. And looking back, I really see the red flags now because I had started to carry buckets in the car. I had started to carry buckets just in the areas, in our common areas. And it hadn't really occurred to me how abnormal that was because it had just very slowly progressed from January till May. And so when May came around, that's 1 week before Ramadan started. So Ramadan's around the corner now. And we were doing a picnic where we were preparing the kids for Ramadan. We did I read out loud to the kids, Curious George does Ramadan.
Yeah.
And we were coming home from that, and Tariq looked over at me. We were at a red light, and he looked over at me and he said, Mommy, there's 2 of you. That's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And again, I still, it's not on your radar. You look around, you don't see any reason to suspect something like this. So in my head, what logically occurred is my husband wears glasses.
Yeah, I would have thought the same thing.
He probably just needs glasses. And does he even, he's 5, right? They make up imaginary friends at this age. So there's just so much going on. We went to the doctors, the ophthalmologist, the next day. And, this is a test we all have done at one point or another in life, that test where he takes his finger and he goes across and comes back. He sounded the alarms. Like there was something very, very wrong in that moment. And apparently, he's told me later, the left eye flickered, which apparently means that there is pressure on the ocular nerve. So at that time, I'm thinking, we've got to stop by Panera's on our way home. I'm thinking nothing. And he asks for the pediatrician's number, leaves the appointment to go call the pediatrician, comes back in the room, and they have it all set up. And so we did that. And again, still no concerns on my front. I'm thinking, what is going on? But nothing really is clicking. And when we went the next day, that's when my world fell apart. Like there's the stage at which there's the pre-cancer world.
Yes.
And then there is the post-cancer world. So that was May 25th, 2017 for our family. And
so just to clarify, this was just the pediatrician's office. You hadn't had any imaging yet. It was just you going from the ophthalmologist's office back to your pediatrician.
Right. My pediatrician's office is, I luckily it's located inside of a hospital. So they were able to have a quick CT done, which indicated the concern. And then we moved to an MRI very quickly. And that obviously clarified a lot more. So the brain tumor that he has is called medulloblastoma. And it's a tumor that's located in the back of the brain, kind of near the temple area. And it was so large for a
Oh my
5-year-old.
God.
You can, as a 5-year-old, we could put our hand around their skull at this stage, and this was the size of a softball,
Oh my gosh.
the way that they described it. And so I kept looking, I'm looking at this image on the screen that they've pulled up, and then I'm looking over at my child, and he's just playing Sonic the Hedgehog and laughing and just enjoying life. And I'm thinking, how is it possible that this is there? Like, how did this, And no one, of course, has any answers. The oncologist at that point, sorry, the neurosurgeon had walked in at that point and was explaining that sometimes these things can come on in a week, sometimes they can be there since birth. We really, as Western medicine with the most advanced level of technology, we have not really been able to decipher when and how that occurs. So that was that part of the journey with what the diagnosis day looked like, what the diagnosis week looked like. And that from that point, it was like a spiral.
Yeah.
If any mom has been through any level of a journey where you have all of a sudden a medical condition that needs to be dealt with right away. And so that was the next thing was I have blackouts from those days. I have blackouts from actually the entire year.
Yeah. Because
Um,
your adrenaline is going, right? You're just like,
Yeah.
go, 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 go. I mean, we didn't have something but we had something similar with my youngest. Same thing. They thought it was cancer. And it was like, we've never seen this before. So he was throwing up, vomiting, same situation, but he was only 6 months old, right? So he was 6 months old. He couldn't talk. He had just started eating solid foods it was a Monday. By Friday, he was getting his gallbladder removed. But it's one of those things where they thought it was cancer and you're going and you're just like, you're going to specialist. And you're like, what? They're like, nope, now you have to have surgery. And you're like, what? I mean, and then on top of that, you have other kids, you have another life.
Yes.
You're trying to survive. So that part is very, very stressful. And honestly, just even hearing the story, I have goosebumps because I'm
Me
remembering
too.
what I had to deal with when it was mine. And thankfully, alhamdulillah, like it was such a small thing. And now he turned 8 and he loves to show everybody his scars from his surgery. So like, he's like, look at my scars because I have no gallbladder. Like he thinks that that's like a superhuman thing. And it does make him special, my baby. So like when you're in that moment, when you're dealing with this, like what are the things that you did to help you get through that chaotic, and I know you black out, I know you don't remember it, but when you have those conscientious moments, what are the things that you had to do in order to get through that difficult time?
Yeah. I think that on many levels, a mom is going through so many different things, but at the same time, you're sort of keeping abreast with what needs to happen in your day-to-day life. Like right now, you and I, we've got after school situations with our kids going on. We've got maybe, a kid has a birthday party to go to. Like I mentioned on Sunday, I've got that. I was dealing with the cancer situation, but I was very acutely aware that it was my son's 5th grade year and it was the last year and there were all these like upcoming things happening.
Yes.
And so there was this part of me, and I, I'll even go on to say that there were days where I'm an educator. I'm a person who checks his homework, double checks his homework, makes sure it's there. I'm that mom that goes and hands it in if he forgot it at home. That's just who I've always been. But now I wasn't sure how he got to school, if he got to school. I hadn't checked homework in a week. Every once in a while it would click and I would email his teacher and she would say, don't worry about anything. He's doing just fine. Okay. So those were my two sort of outside shell ways of dealing with the world. I was dealing with my son. I was dealing with my older one, and I was dealing with what was happening in the hospital setting. Internally, I was a mess.
Yes.
Internally, I was questioning if something I had done in my life had caused this. I very much believe that these children are innocent, that they can do no harm, they can do no evil. And however, if they're hurt, if they're in pain, is it something that a parent had brought forth? I know culturally that can be a huge factor that comes in from the motherland, that, the parents must have done something, or baddua, or these kinds of words kind of come through. And so internally, I was this huge mess where I think I had always felt sheltered and protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this moment, I didn't. And I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what to make of that. I remember having very close conversations with some girlfriends in the car where I was saying, you know, I'm not saying that my faith is shattered or not there anymore, but I'm scared. I'm scared of how I'm going to come out of this. I'm scared for my soul. And so that was really scary internally. Of course, what you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Zeba, I'm an educator. I'm not in the field of medicine, but now I'm having to learn 3 pages of medical
Yes.
information at every turn. I
And
had
reading everything and going and don't Google. Google is the freaking worst when you're in situations like this. I'm
Yes,
like going to go
exactly.
like, oh, gotta step back.
Yeah,
Go to
but
yeah,
it's like our
just
go-to, right? It's what we do.
yeah.
And so, I'm Googling, I'm trying to join Facebook groups, I'm hearing these
Mhm.
horrible stories and I'm hearing different things. And at the same time, I am worried for what is my son thinking? He went from being this kid who was running and jumping and requesting Paneras yesterday, the day before, a week before, to all of a sudden being poked and prodded at every turn. Some of the medicine now we were giving him, we had to give him steroids. It was making him rage, like
Yes.
really rage. Like he wanted to bite me and he wanted to scratch me and all these bad things. I was imagining, what must be going on in that that little innocent mind about what this world is putting him through.
Like you said, it was a pre-cancer world and then a post-cancer world, and that for
Yeah,
you was May 25th. I see my beautiful co-host, she is having a hard time keeping it together over here, and,
for all of us.
for all of us, but so what are you thinking right now as a doctor, as somebody that, has a child with chronic illness, how are you handling, Samia's story?
I'm here. Yeah.
I'm touching your face on camera, can you feel me?
Yeah. It's triggering, right? Because
Yeah.
when I was stuck in the hospital with my daughter, I didn't feel like I had the luxury of, when you're talking about the blackout, it's these periods that you don't remember, but the thing is that I do, because I knew the science of what was happening.
Yeah, that's sometimes
And
worse,
so
right?
I think that would be, I think it was relieving, but I had to make a conscious decision to not be her mom
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be able to do it if I connected with her too deeply. So I was almost operating like a stranger. Like, let
Mhm.
me act like she's a patient so I don't
Get
um
sucked in emotionally.
I didn't want my heart to be broken if she
Yeah.
died.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it was just so much to learn on the other side of the bed. And I want to assure you, Samia, that even if you had had all of the science, I missed so many signs for my daughter too. And in my gut, I knew something was wrong and I couldn't get anybody to believe me. And I have initials after my name. And so, one of the most important things I learned in this process, being in the hospital, being on the other side of the bed without my stethoscope and with a sick kid, was the system is designed to fail us. And if we don't have medical advocates for our
Yeah.
children, especially if we're not physicians or nurses or, involved in the medical field in some way, your kid is probably going to die or will have long term side effects and sequela that were probably avoidable. But
Yeah.
because we don't know what we don't know in medicine,
Yeah.
our voices get lost. We are the hysterical mothers. And dude, I was one of those doctors who the reason I didn't do pediatrics was because of the hysterical mothers. And then I became one. And I had to because nobody would listen to me when I'm
You
saying,
have to, girl, when it's your baby, you got to do it.
yeah,
You've
I'm
got
not
to.
Googling this. I'm not WebMD. I'm an actual MD. Listen to me.
Yeah.
And, that was the most painful lesson that I learned. So now one of the reasons I go into the clubhouse rooms is to offer myself as, listen, if you have nobody medical in your pocket, call me. Like,
Yeah.
reach out to me. I will
Yes.
I will tell you what questions to ask. I'll review whatever records you want me to review because I don't want another kid, I don't want another family to go through this because while we were there, I saw it happening to other families. And I wish I could have stepped out of that clinical, like, numbness that I put myself into.
But you
But it
needed
is
it to
one thing we're having.
survive, Uzma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You needed
you're
it
just
to
That was
survive
a
in that
survival
moment.
thing. Yeah.
I wish I had had some of that. I think that's why I ended up blacking out. So what you're saying, I mean, that's what you needed to get through those days.
right, right. I mean, every mom does what she's gotta do, and, I think it's so important to be open to the learning opportunities in this. So, during your, hospital experience, can you talk about some of the lessons that you learned?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, I felt a lot of what you just said, and I think at the very beginning I was not. I am this I've always been this very relaxed, laid back, anything can happen, we can go anywhere, I'm good, I'm happy, where I'm, just that's just who I am and who I was. I'll make it work kind of a personality. And what I kept finding through this experience, so with Tariq and with what it was, it's medulloblastoma. The typical treatment includes radiation. So first they do surgery, they remove as much as they can, then they do radiation, and it's very intense. It's 5 days a week under anesthesia,
Mhm.
every single day, and for 6 weeks. And so this child is going in and out of this coma like state, and he wakes up, he's confused, he's delirious. And with Tariq, when it happened after he woke up from his surgery, unfortunately he had suffered from something called PFS, which is posterior fossa syndrome. And what that does is cause, so when they go in for the surgery, they cut into a lot of different places. And what that does is
Mhm.
cause a lot of confusion because they've cut into places that he no longer can talk, or he no longer can move certain parts of his body. And that's what he woke up with. And all of this gave me the impression that the medicine and the doctors and nurses and everyone, and I know everyone has good intention. It
Yes.
gave me the initial impression that everyone's doing their best. This is like we are getting star treatment. But it was
Mhm.
so quick for me to realize that without an advocate, without somebody in his corner watching his things, looking over his medicine, that it human error, or just what have you, someone needs to go to lunch, so they go to lunch, just it happens. And that was the part that was so disheartening at first, that realization that I was basically going to have to be a very different human in order to survive this new environment. And so that's what ended up happening. Now Tariq spent probably a week and a half, 2 weeks not talking at all. That was
Mm.
hell. And then he woke up from that a little bit and had some words or some smiles. So that helped me a teeny tiny bit with my level of pain and what I was thinking and feeling. We slowly worked our way up from a wheelchair to a walker to now, alhamdulillah, he's moving and walking. He still has left side palsy from that time frame, which just hasn't come back. And so, there's a droop on that side. So through the process, the big thing that I kept feeling was I needed to be this very different person than who I was. So I come in, and now I know the 3 pages of medicine lists. I know when an NG tube is about to get clogged
Mhm.
because that particular powder, when it's ground out, it will not work. You
Yeah.
cannot make it go in. And I don't think I had ever spoken to people in the way that I now had to speak to people.
Mhm.
As an educator, I work with little kids, and I do that for a reason. I don't want to stand up to adults. That's just not my
Mhm.
spirit. I want to just, lay low, and everybody come sit in a circle, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I had to become this very different person. And I think the worst moment of that is during chemo, during all of this, you get something called a port, and it's placed here in your chest so that they don't have to stick you all the time to give blood, to take blood, to give medicine, take medicine. And the port needs to be accessed at a certain angle, at a certain professional level. And so we were going in, and I said, please, can we run up to oncology, have the nurses there do it? They're experts, they know what they're doing. We'll be back down to radiology in a minute. And they said, no, 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 we did the training for this. And I said,
Mm.
I really don't know. Can you please just like give me a minute? Like I've seen this go wrong. And at that moment, the supervisor really stepped up, got in my face and said, we don't have time. We have a schedule of radiology patients to get to, and I
Hell
really need to get
no.
going. So I did what old Samia would do. And I said, okay, sure. And we had my son get stuck with the port, but it was at an angle where the needle broke inside of him. And I know that sounds crazy, and it was crazy. It was, it broke inside of him because she was shaking, and it was a new tech. And I don't blame her.
Oh, heck. Yes, you should blame her because
I
you
know. I'm
told
like,
her.
who did you blame then?
I don't blame the person who should have
Had to
training
do
that
it.
knew. It's the
Yes.
person,
Okay.
it's the supervisor, it's the person who really was arguing and fighting and saying, no, we're
Yeah.
trained and we're good and we don't have time for this. Because it literally would have taken, I'm at Children's National in Washington, D.C. at that point. So it would have
Yeah.
only taken us a minute or two, go up, come back down.
Mm-hmm.
I lost it. That I think my dad was with me that day, and he had seen a side of me that I don't think he's ever seen, even as a little girl, just I lost it. And I turned down, Tarek was in a wagon. We used to carry him around in a wagon because he was too weak to walk. And I said, mommy has this. Mommy's going to talk to them for you. And the level at which I spoke, I remember looking down at his face, and the level at which he felt protected and sheltered by the fact that I was speaking the way I was, that let me know that I was on the right path. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't the bully or the whatever that I used to think old Samia would have thought, but not now. And so that really helped me sort of become this person who can participate in a podcast and not shy away, and can just, it's a completely new type of way of living life than what was happening before. So
I love that because you learned you were able to capture a point of yourself as your child's advocate. And I'm a big believer in always being your child's advocate. I tell my kids all the time, listen, I've got you. So you don't have to worry about it. And they know sometimes it's a little too much. Chicago comes out, right? And I have to take a step back. And they literally say, not Chicago level, mama. Like I'm like, do I need to get involved? And they're like, not Chicago level. You can do the McLean level. I'm like, okay, you can do the McLean level. But that's the truth. You have to be, and we have to have enough confidence as a mother that you might not know all, like what Uzma knows, all the science, all the this, all that, but you know what's right for your child, right?
Yes,
and that's what everybody needs to take from this today. You might not have the letters behind your name like my beautiful co-host does, but what you do have is the 3 letters that count the most, and that is MOM. And guess what? That makes you the expert of that kid in front of you right now. But, we've heard some of this trauma, and I want you to tell us, how is he doing right now? And can we share that information with our audience today?
Absolutely. So just to wrap up what you were just saying, I ended up in a position where I spoke up for him in a way that was, Zeba, what you were saying earlier with your childhood issues, where you might fight for justice and you might stand up. I started to become that person, and I would admire people like you growing up. You were actually defending people like me growing up.
I would be like, I was mean. If somebody says something to me, I'm like, whatever. But I was like, don't you say anything about her.
Sure, exactly.
I will come after you.
I have stories. So when I got older and I came to this new realization, I now speak as a person who knows what is best for both of my kids. My other one also has some other things going on. And the way that I have researched and understand and have attended conferences, I very regularly will have people asking if I'm in the medical field. So if I happen to be at a doctor's appointment, or, we're in the ER for one reason or another, it's very typical that the person who I am interacting with will say, are you a physician too? Are you a nurse too? Are you in the medical field as well? And I'll say, nope, I'm just a teacher, but I'm his mom. And so Coming
Yes.
back to where we are now. So 2017 and 2018, we went through chemo, and alhamdulillah, we were able to ring the bell and focus and finally cross that finish line into remission halfway through 2018. And we are now having scans every 6 months, and he has continually had scans that are clear, that are nice, that are showing that he
Mashallah.
has, yes, it's the acronym is NED, and it stands for no evidence of disease. And so those are the magic letters that you want to hear anytime you've ever had a cancer journey that you've gone through. But alhamdulillah, he, like I had mentioned, has gone through so much therapy when it comes to PT and OT and speech, and even just, making sure he's mentally doing okay, that just in the last just in this last 2020, in fact, he's finally coming out of his shell. He's finally, I'm getting some of that witty comeback that I used to have way back when he was 5. So we've been through a whole journey. He's currently considered in remission. We have a few more years to go before he's considered officially cancer free. So I ask everyone everywhere all the time to continue making dua for our family. It's one of those circumstances where it could just be a coin toss and we could be in the other direction of life, and it could be a coin toss and we can remain completely free and where we are now. But yeah, between he and his older brother, they really are enjoying life. One of our biggest breakthroughs that happened is our oncologist really pushed us that even with COVID going on, this child has now been without social settings for so many years.
Yes.
That's just been a huge decline with what we had going on. Even when he attended school in kindergarten and first grade, I had to regularly pull him out either for surgeries or for doctor's appointments or scans. And so there's just been so much of that he pushed us and said, I really want you to try some of these other things that are available to him. And so we just joined a soccer team that's called Sportables. And Sportables is an organization that works with different abled children and adults. And they have all sorts of things, everything from archery to swimming to soccer to basketball. And so we just did soccer. It's been 2 Sundays and it's going amazing.
Mashallah.
It's going just really, really well. The smile on his face and the excitement on his face is something I don't think I've ever seen. Normally, I would have started all of this at the age of 5, and we just kind of got thrown for a loop. So alhamdulillah, that's where he is now. Like I said, I always ask for duas that whatever is best and whatever is healthiest for our family continues to prevail.
That is really, really good news. I love it. This illness and the recovery, all of the rehab that you've had to do with your son, how has his illness and recovery informed what you do now, the work that you do?
Yeah. So a big part of what I was really floored by was some of the actual funding and research percentages that go towards childhood cancer and pediatric cancer diagnosis, finding a cure, even just being able to help the process of what kind of medicine is available, what kind of chemo is available. So what I, at that time in 2017, was most floored by is just the lack of awareness that we have. And so I regularly try, I could be at the grocery store or I can be on a podcast. I regularly try and bring some awareness to the organizations that are really making a difference and really putting in an effort towards bringing safety, bringing information, and bringing forth some funding in the direction of childhood cancer. Of the entire budget that the federal government puts together towards cancer in general, adult and childhood, only a very small fraction, 4% of that, goes towards childhood cancer. And childhood cancer is one of those, it's so different from adult cancers that it just doesn't get influenced by the type of research and funding that they found. So my big 3 things are, there's an organization called St. Baldrick's. And St. Baldrick's is an organization that does these really fun St. Patty's Day parade type parties. They have shaving heads going on. They've got like a rock star band happening. But the big thing of what they're doing in those events is raising money, privately funded. They're the largest organization in the world to privately raise enough money to put towards different levels of research that hold promise anywhere in the world. And so that's a big part of what we've participated in for the last few years. I also have participated in action days. And so we have an action day through an organization called ACCO, American Childhood Cancer Organization. And they will have meet and greet setups with different legislature folks. And, you know, because I'm only 2 hours away from DC, that's been a very fortunate thing that I've been able to participate in. It's coming up in case anyone's interested. It's April 26th, and it'll be virtual this year with everything going on. So that's another one. Locally, there are things like Ask. There are things through my business that I've been doing where I've been reaching back out to families who are currently going through treatment and offering any type of educator support for their siblings, for the other kids in their family. It's that, I think, has been a really rewarding experience. There are kids today that have a port, and they're in PE class and the PE teacher doesn't understand what that is and says no. Yeah, and says no, you have to do jumping jacks.
Heck no.
And that's not safe. So
yeah,
that has been really rewarding for me to be able to participate in locally. And I do that where I partner up with a local cancer organization here called Ask. And so those are sort of my top favorite ones that I like to at least let people know exist, and what else we can do to get to the next level.
I love that. And I think we're going to go ahead and share all those links in our show notes as well, so that people that are going through this circumstance and situation know what resources and where they can go for that. So thank you, Samia, for doing that. But my last question for you, and this is kind of why we're doing what we're doing here today, is how can we, as your mom sisters, help somebody else going through this unfortunate situation? You mentioned the siblings at home. You mentioned all that. I mean, there's so many things that are a factor of taking care of a chronically ill child that kind of fall through the cracks. So what are the top things that you would suggest someone wanting to help their sister in need during a circumstance like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one thing I wanted to mention is that almost every childhood pediatric hospital setting will have, and if they don't have, they really should, a program called the Child Life Program. And so I had never heard of Child Life before in my life. I didn't even when I heard about it, I wasn't sure how influential it would be. But in my son's care in that year and a half, the way that Child Life helped. So what they do is they come and really hone in on the major ways in which that child is struggling. If it's anger, if it's something to do with wanting outside socialization, whatever it is, they go through and they have a vast amount of resources available to them, and they put that together. And so I would say, if there are parents who are receiving this kind of news today, if there are parents who are just really at a loss, even if it's a friend, look into the Child Life Program that might exist in their local hospital, and if not, advocate for one. It's a huge step up from a social worker point of view. They have a completely different range. So that's the first big one. The next big one is there are organizations like Momcology. Momcology is a nationwide program. Yeah, they have these amazing links with other mothers. I participated in a retreat that they've done. It was so cathartic to participate and be around and surrounded by those that just understand, that just know without you having to speak a word. So earlier in the process, they can help with all sorts of links. The state of Virginia here will offer families respite, will offer families all sorts of either financial aid or different types of aid. But as a parent, you don't even know where to start. You don't have the energy on how to do that. And so one thing I learned is, if you reach out to the hospital social worker and you say, this is my circumstance, this is what I've got going on, please help, they can actually do so much of that legwork. And so that would be my first step, is to reach out to the social worker, reach out to the Child Life people, contact your local Momcology organization and see what influences, what things they might have to offer in your area. And almost all cities, they have different names. Here in Richmond, it's called Connor's Heroes. It's called Ask. I know in Maryland, it's called Sunbelt. There's all sorts of different organizations locally that are dedicated to childhood cancer families. And so reaching and finding those folks makes a huge difference in surviving those particular months or years of what we have to get through. So those are my top ones. I am obviously available anytime, anywhere. And that, I've had WhatsApp friends that have unfortunately had the diagnosis since my son was diagnosed, and we've never met in real life, but they are heart to heart mom sisters of mine. So those are my top ones. I don't think I'm missing anything major. Yeah, those are my top ones.
I think those are all excellent. And that's not to, downplay the work of the community that I'm sure rallied around you as well. Even if they didn't know anything about it, even if you can't connect on, a cognitive level with what's going on, you still feel a mom's pain in your heart, guys. So I, highly recommend just send dinner. Don't ask, just send it, like go pick up her kids, go get them to school, because again, Samia was talking about the blackouts. It's really hard to organize your life around and be that, very type A person without support. So if she's a type A, even if she's a type C minus, I would say do what needs to be done for her other children, for the rest of her household. Samia, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
You're 100%.
Yeah. My big thing is we just show up, because the way I think to take care of all of our children is to take care of all of our moms. And that's something that, we believe strongly in at Momming While Muslim. And we so appreciate your story and your candor and the walk down memory lane for some of us. It's just surprising, I think, because you got emotional too. It's like, does the trauma ever go away? I don't know. I don't know what the future is. Yeah.
I don't think I'd go even a couple of days without having it either pop up in my mind or just come up in conversation somehow. And so that is an indicator to me that it is still very much on the forefront of my mind. And, alhamdulillah, this was 2017. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So if it's not, that's okay. We're here for you anytime. We don't have experience in childhood cancer personally, but we would love to be your safe space too. And for anybody in the audience who wants more information, we'll have it in the show notes. And we so appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, from Momming While Muslim.
Alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me.
Assalamu alaikum. Until next time.
Inshallah.
This episode of Momming While Muslim is brought to you by Guidance Residential. Join Guidance Residential on March 23rd for a free career webinar and find out about job opportunities with the company that might help you, your family, and your community. This episode is also sponsored by Muslim Kids TV, where you can find over 15,000 resources, including Islamic videos, games, and ebooks for your children. Use code MKTV2021 to get a 25% discount off of your annual subscription.